Welcome to AS London Wellness Academy. Today's video is covering the digestive system. So without food, water and oxygen, human beings would not be able to survive. The digestive system is the set of organs which transform whatever we eat into substances that can be used in the body for energy, growth and repair. Once the food has been broken down by various chemical processes and all the nutrients removed, the rest is excreted as waste. The whole process involves many different organs and can take several hours. So what is digestion? It's the breakdown and transformation of solid and liquid food into microscopic substances. These substances are then transported by the blood into different areas of the body. There are 4 stages of digestion. You have the mouth, which is ingestion, so it's the chewing and swallowing, the start of the starch digestion. The stomach, which is mixing and protein digestion. The small intestine, which is carbohydrate and fat digestion and absorption, and the large intestine is waste and excretion. So let's start with the mouth. In the mouth is where the action of teeth and saliva combine in the first stages of breakdown, chewing and partially digesting the food so that it will pass more easily along the esophagus. The ball of food that leaves the mouth is known as the bolus. Saliva is a liquid secreted by 3 pairs of salivary glands. You have the parotid gland, which is just below the ear, and the submandibular gland and the sublingual gland. Both of these are situated below the tongue. It contains water, mucus, and the enzyme salivary amylase. Your saliva has 3 functions. The function is to lubricate the food with mucus. This will make it easier to swallow. To start digestion, it contains the enzyme salivary amylase, which acts on cooked starch, turning it into shorter polysaccharides. And it also keeps the mouth and teeth clean. So what is an enzyme? If you think about the food that we eat and the difference in size between it and the microscopic size of the cells and tissues that actually the food feeds and supports your body, it's easy to understand why your digestive system is so essential into breaking food down into different units that is needed. Enzymes are an important part of this process. Imagine your digestive system as a conveyor belt. The enzymes are your machines and workers which slowly change whatever is on that belt to make it smaller and smaller so that eventually it can be carried around the body, contained in your blood. They are made of proteins and act as catalysts, which means they make chemical changes happen in other substances whilst themselves remaining unchanged. They act on food, changing it into smaller particles. Starting with the tongue then, the structure of the tongue is a muscular organ covered with a membrane. It's held in place by the attachment to the mandible, so your lower jaw, and the hyoid bone. You have tiny projections known as papillae over the top. This increases the surface area and produces a rough texture. These sensory nerve endings form what we know as your taste buds. We have 3 functions for your tongue. Taste, because the tongue is covered with thousands of taste buds which are sensitive to salt, sweet and sour, and also anything bitter or any bitter chemicals found in food and drink. They help us enjoy what we eat but act as a defence to the body, as they warn us if any drink or food is off or any foreign matter are going to enter that could actually cause us harm. Chewing. The tongue aids chewing by moving food around the mouth, pushing it between the teeth and covering it with saliva. This contains enzymes that start the digestive process. The food is turned into a partially digested mass known as your bolus. And swallowing. When the food is ready to travel to the stomach, the tongue pushes it to the back of the mouth. So we're going to look at briefly how the food gets from the mouth to the stomach via the action of swallowing and through the portion of the gastrointestinal tract known as the esophagus. The tongue pushes the bolus to the back of the mouth towards the pharynx, a muscular tube beyond the mouth. The food passes into the pharynx and down to the esophagus. There is a small flap of cartilage which forms part of the larynx, which is the windpipe, and this moves upwards and forwards. It blocks the entrance to the larynx. This stops any food from going down the wrong way and prevents choking. So let's look at the structure of the esophagus then. The structure is that it's a muscular tube which leads from the pharynx at the back of the mouth to lead to the stomach. And this is the first main organ of digestion. The function is to carry chewed food from the pharynx to the stomach. Food moves along by a muscular contraction. The muscle fibres contract and relax, which acts like a wave on the tube. This pushes the bolus forward. The lining of the esophagus secretes mucus to ease and lubricate the passage of food. So let's look at the stomach. The stomach is a J-shaped elastic organ which expands and contracts depending what's in it. Food enters it from the esophagus via the cardiac sphincter, a valve that stops backflow of the stomach's contents, and leaves through the pyloric sphincter in the duodenum. This is actually the first part of the small intestine. The wall of the stomach is a combination of layers of muscle fibres within a mucous membrane. The latter has lots of folds, and when the stomach is full, they stretch out, enabling expansion. Then they contract when it is emptied. So the function of the stomach is that it digests proteins through the action of enzymes, it churns food with gastric juices, and it helps to lubricate the food by producing mucus. The stomach absorbs alcohol and kills bacteria by producing hydrochloric acid, and also stores food prior to it passing into the small intestine. Food may stay in your stomach for as little as 30 minutes or as long as 4 hours, depending what it is. Carbohydrate meals are the quickest to leave the stomach because they are not digested until the small intestine. So the gastric juices found in your stomach contain hydrochloric acid. This neutralises bacteria and activates pepsin. Renin, which is an enzyme that curdles milk protein, but only for infants, and pepsin is an enzyme that acts on proteins, turning them into polypeptides. At this stage, proteins have been partially digested, and along with the carbohydrates such as starch, which we partially digest in the mouth, they have to wait until the small intestine to complete digestion. So the chemistry behind digestion. The whole digestive process is a combination of different chemical reactions that act on the food that we eat, reducing it to building blocks of nutrients so that the body can absorb them. Every piece of food we eat is composed of fats, carbohydrates and proteins. These must be broken down into the relative chemical compound in order for the body to use them. So for an example, by the time the bread that you eat reaches the muscles as energy, it's been chewed, churned, liquefied, and the starch has been turned into usable glucose. We're going to be looking at the following stages to show the main chemical reactions and the breakdown at all these different stages. So let's start with proteins. Protein foods include dairy products, meat, fish and beans. They are made up of interlinked polypeptide chains and are the building material for the body. In order to be used by the body, they must be broken down into smaller components, amino acids. There are approximately 20 amino acids, classified whether they are essential, which means the body cannot make them, so they have to be supplied by the diet, or non-essential, these are the amino acids that the body can make. Proteins are broken down into the body by following processes. First of all, in the stomach, the enzyme pepsin begins the digestion of proteins by breaking them down into large polypeptides. Then in the small intestine, where enzymes from the pancreas, including trypsin and chymotrypsin, break the large polypeptides into smaller chains. And then in the small intestine, enzymes from the intestine, including aminopeptase, breaks up the small polypeptides into individual amino acids ready for absorptions. Please join us on the next video to look into more detail on carbohydrates, fats and the intestines.